Well, we know that the FBI showed up this morning on boats at around 10:30 in the morning, a team searching his island, even though accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein is dead and the federal trial against him will never happen. It's still an unmistakable message from the Department of Justice. This isn't over.
Hot summer streets and the pavements are burning. I sit around trying to smile, but the air is so heavy and dry. It's a cruel, cruel summer. Leaving me here on my own. It's a cruel, cruel summer. Now you're
gone. Deep dive. Death of another pawn. Jeffrey Epstein. The real official narrative is the real conspiracy theory. The official story of serial elite pedophile trafficker Jeffrey Epstein's death is the real conspiracy theory. Somehow, officials expect us to believe a man hung himself with a bed sheet and a bunk bed, shrieking, broke several neck bones. All cameras were pointed away from the cell. The guards were sleeping. Of those guarding, one was a substitute. His inmate was just transferred a day before he was taken off of suicide watch after attempting to actually kill himself. While in reality, he warned the authorities that his cellmate, a ex-mobster and ex-cop charged with killing and kidnapping 4 people, was trying to kill him just weeks prior. All of this compounded with the release of a dossier of documents one day before, and those documents suggestively implicated rich and very powerful pedophiles in the network. You have the ingredients for a story with a smell so foul that it's not the rotting corpse stench. But no, that's not all. This expands way further than what most people are seeing. Epstein, a 6-foot-tall man, was found impossibly hanging by a bedsheet strapped to a bunk bed, according to the NY Post. There are numerous holes in what's being reported as the official narrative, with more being added day by day, hour by hour, and minute by minute. As an example, one of the guards that was supposed to be guarding Epstein's cell was actually a substitute. It has also been alleged that shrieking was being heard from Epstein's cell, and we can't tell why because there's no cameras pointing at the cell from outside or within the cells themselves. Further, it has since been reported that the guard who previously said they were working overtime when Epstein killed himself were actually sleeping on the job and forged checkup papers in the prison wing, as a Zero Hedge article had reported. As the official narrative fell into place and falls into place, it's actually becoming a conspiracy theory itself. It has recently been reported that the autopsy performed on Epstein since last Saturday has found that he broke multiple bones in his neck, including the hyoid bone, which in men is near the Adam's apple. These breaks can occur in those who hang themselves, particularly if they are older, according to forensics experts and studies on this subject. However, the report notes that they are more common in victims of homicide by strangulation. As a side note, this is an old symbol used by the mafia, mob, to silence someone or anyone else who might dare speak. Studies cited that the Washington Post suggested between 6% and 1/4 of hanging suicides could see the hyoid break. This is significant because Epstein himself warned that someone tried to kill him weeks before and notified the authorities, the Washington Post first reported after his death. Since then, a follow-up report by the NY Post has confirmed that claim, stating that Epstein had told his lawyers that his cellmate, an alleged mobster and ex-cop, Nicholas Tartaglione, had injured him, choking him weeks prior. This is the reason that Epstein wasn't on suicide watch, according to his lawyers. So there is the question that everyone had. Why wasn't he on suicide watch? He just tried to harm himself. Well, it's looking like facts are coming out that he didn't, that this bunkie of his was the one behind the initial, we only get reports, folks, but as time goes on, it's looking like that's why he possibly was taken off suicide watch so quick, because he was never suicidal. It was something else. Now, it's worth noting that Tartaglione was allegedly transferred 1 day prior before Epstein's death. However, Epstein's guards reportedly fell asleep during the hours before his death, then falsified paperwork to try to cover their tracks. So it is implausible to think that Tartaglione wasn't transferred a day before Epstein's death, and that shrieking heard was Epstein having his neck snapped by the alleged mobster and former cop. Still, many questions remain. There's even more strangeness than most are reporting. According to reports, Epstein also spent 2 hours locked up alone with a mysterious woman, possibly part of his legal team, 1 day after he was taken off suicide watch, or after the Tartaglione had attempted to strangle him the first time. To add to all the oddness, Epstein's body was claimed from the New York City Medical Examiner's Office by an unknown associate, according to NBC News. If that's not enough to wet your conspiracy whistle, 4chan, which we put a video out on, reported Epstein's death 38 minutes before any other media outlet, with a user giving very detailed insight into medical procedures used to attempt to resurrect Epstein. But that effort was of insignificant use, since Epstein was dead for up to 2 hours before his body was even found. It has additionally been reported that Epstein told his lawyers hours before his death that he would see them Sunday, tomorrow. He thought he was going to win the double jeopardy motion. That's what his defense lawyers were planning to file in connection with his 2008 Florida prostitution conviction. The source said that the multimillionaire, who was jailed in Lower Manhattan on orders from a judge who cited his uncontrollable sexual urges, also had hoped of getting bail on appeal, the source said, through an application that was pending before the U.S. Second Circuit Court of Appeals at the time of his death. What he really wanted to do was get out on bail so he could cooperate, a source told the New York Post. Even Epstein's own lawyers don't believe that the wealthy financier pedophile committed suicide. 3 of Mr. Epstein's lawyers, Martin G. Winberg, Reed Wintergarten, and Michael Miller, challenged the findings and vowed to conduct their own investigations. CBS reported on that as well. We are not satisfied with the conclusion of the medical examiner, said the lawyers, who had hired a private pathologist to observe the autopsy in a statement. We will also have more complete response in the coming days, they added. Pandora's box. How deep does the ring really go? Hollywood, intelligence, politicians, and even royalty. Pandora's box has been opened, folks. The whole wide world, including numerous journalists now, see the elite's hidden sick secret of pedophilia. Although what comes out of thus far is barely scratching the surface of justice. According to multiple reports following Epstein's death, the feds have now uncovered another black book with even more names after a raid at Jeffrey Epstein's island. Combine that with the fact that Epstein's sex slave books were brought back into focus with the release of the documents. And no one can deny any longer what went on at the pedophile's number of different properties. Many have forgotten, but a previous report by Fox News and the Associated Press entitled "Jeffrey Epstein, Registered Sex Offender, Settles Civil Lawsuit and Avoids Testimony from Alleged Victims" talks about the slave craft books police found in the trash before the recent publication in the unsealed court files. New reports are coming out today on Epstein that his modeling agency provided Jeffrey Epstein with over thousands of underage girls, some which most likely met their demise at the hands of Epstein and the elite circle of pedo that this reaches into. Further on that, on a deeper level, Epstein's pedo ring likely reaches into pedophile circles and elite child pornography industry worldwide. This is due to information about Epstein purchasing a young girl, Natalia Makavakova, from her family in the Yugoslavia, and allegations he purchased other girls from South America and other countries, promising them modeling careers, according to several victims of the trafficking. So it wasn't like, he offered the parents money straight up for, human trafficking. It was under the guise of, I can make them models, it'll be prosperous, money will be sent back home to you guys if you're not here living as already. I mean, who knows what was promises made from this devil himself. A lot of girls came from poor countries or poor backgrounds, basically, and he lured them with a promise of, making good money. Epstein's ring also reaches into the intelligence circles through the reportedly from Homeland Security with Edward Barak and Mega Corp, a company formed with influential people, including Israeli intelligence, as journalist Whitney Webb has reported. In short, to wrap all this up in a nutshell, Epstein's ring and the exposure of it could bring down a lot of powerful, influential people in one strong swoop. That's why Epstein had to have his neck broken in multiple spots before he could cooperate with authorities for a lesser sentence. It appears mostly all of the people being accused were recorded doing sexual acts with underage girls and God knows what else on that island. All of the accused have denied they were involved, but there are several witnesses and other victims that back people like Virginia Griffey and others who have claimed, have these claims of the depravity by these elitists. One of Epstein's pilots, David Rogers, testified that he flew defendant Ghislaine Maxwell and Griffey at least 23 times on Epstein's jet, the Lolita Express, and that GM on the flight logs stand for Ghislaine Maxwell. This all has a big stink to it. And the remaining question is, will the corrupt non-prosecution deal that Epstein had been given that also protected potential co-conspirators be thrown out? The last time an elite pedophile ring was exposed was the Franklin cover-up, which was linked to the Finders and its blackmail pawn, Craig Spence. Investigators Gary Cordo and Newitt Koppel were killed. A CIA director, William Colby, was found drowned at the bottom of his own lake. And the allegations made by a number of victims were deemed not credible, with several of them being threatened, having family killed, and etc., so on. Will history repeat itself with Epstein, or will the hammers of justice finally slam down on the elite pedophiles, some of which have been abusing kids for decades, from ring to ring? It all relies on a grand jury. A grand jury can be very powerful, or it can be corrupted. Not saying that the people they impanel are corrupt. A lot of them will be patriots and true supporters of justice. But if you know how a grand jury works, it's all up to who's running it, because the information can either be held back or given to them in full. There is no knowing how that works. It's up to the actual prosecutor and the person bringing the charges and who's running it. Take a look into that and you'll see either grand juries work really well or they don't. And that's because of the information that's either being withheld or given. We'll go more into that later. I'm Michael. This is a Patriot Hour. God bless, Godspeed to each and every one of you. Where we go one, we go all.